If you're just starting out, you probably want to edit your ProRAW photos in the built-in Photos app that comes with your iPhone, your iPad, or your Mac. That's what I tried at first when I was preparing this video. The problem is you can't turn off Apple's ProRAW picture profile, and I'll show you what that is and why it's so important in a moment. But because the Photos app doesn't allow me to turn it off, I'm going to be using Lightroom Mobile instead, as it lets me properly show you how ProRAW files work. There is a free version of Lightroom that you don't have to pay for a subscription to use, and it does come with a lot of tools, and you should be able to follow along using the free version today. But if you don't want to use Lightroom or you don't use it, the tools I use, you can find them in most other editing apps, so you should be able to follow along. This is the image I'm going to be editing. It is an iPhone 16 Pro 48 megapixel ProRAW file taken with REEFLEX's G series 2x telephoto lens. And straight out of the camera, ProRAW images often have this very colourful yet middle of the road look, meaning the shadows aren't too dark and the highlights aren't too bright. Everything's just been evened out, so images look finished. And the thing that is responsible for this is the picture profile. This is that pesky Apple ProRAW picture profile we couldn't remove in the Photos app. So the thing that I do first when I edit my ProRAW photos is I'll either reduce the picture profile or I will change it completely. And there's no right or wrong. The approach you take depends on the image that you're editing and the look that you're trying to achieve. For example, if I go to the left here, show you this image, I created this dreary and downtrodden, urban, muted look by reducing the picture profile from 100 to 70. And you can keep going, make it even more dreary, make Katie's day even worse, or bring it up if you want to brighten a day a little bit. It's up to you. But for this image over here, and what I do most often is I just swap the picture profile out completely. Now you've got a load to choose from. You've got some creative ones in Adobe Lightroom, but the one that I like is not adaptive color, is Adobe Color or Adobe Standard. And you can see now with Adobe Standard, the highlights are now highlights again. The shadows are deeper, they look more like natural shadows. But I want to retain some of that color. I don't want to have to boost much of the saturation across the image. So I'm going to go with Adobe Color. It's a bit more colorful, a bit more punchier than Adobe Standard. So with the profile set, we can go back, and I'm going to start by making the image softer and more faded. So I'm going for an elegant vintage look because of the way Katie is dressed. Vintage with elegance, I think I'm going to describe it. Anyway, let's bring the clarity down, -20, to soften the image. The G series has already made things very soft in the background, but we're going to soften the whole image, including Katie's skin tones and things even more. I'm going to give it a faded look by adjusting the dehaze. And dehaze also makes it lighter as well. And this is a great way to add a fade, one without coming to the curves, which is not available in the paid subscription version of Lightroom anyway, but also without touching the light panel. But we are going to touch the light panel by adding back in some contrast, 15, and like a quarter of a stop. So 0.25, enter, just brighten everything up a bit. Now I'm going to recover the highlights because by adjusting the overall brightness with the exposure, we've made the highlights brighter, which is normal, but they're now a bit too bright, so they're drawing your attention away from our subject, which is Katie here. So I'm going to bring the highlights down, not too much, not like this, because what's in the highlights that I want to see? This? No. And don't be afraid to let your highlights blow out. If there's nothing in them and you just, what are you blowing out? I mean, what are you recovering? Sorry. If this was more in the summer, I took this yesterday, the 10th of April, there's still not leaves on the trees. If this was a luscious screen, one, it wouldn't be blown out, it'd be covered in green. But you get my point. So I'm going to leave it there at minus 68. And now I'm going to come down to the color panel and add to my vintage look by adjusting the colors in the color panel. Really, Dave? Wow, you're so slick today. So I'm going to adjust the greens first, because what we've got here, we've got the grass in the background. We've got Katie, who sits in the reds and oranges, and we've got the blues in the background. Those are our main three colors here today. So let's start with the greens. What do I want to do with the greens, keeping our elegant vintage in mind? Could drag them all the way over to the left, but that gives them that dried out autumnal orangey look. So I don't want that. I want them to look more luscious and like a royal green, a well-watered green. So I'm going to bring the hue up to plus 20. I'm going to bring the luminance down because they're in direct sunlight, these greens here. So what I can do is I can bring the luminance down. So I don't have to mask out just the greens and bring the exposure down. I can bring the luminance down and look at how it affects the greens there. So that's really nice. Sometimes this can look really unnatural if you bring the luminance down all the way. So don't do it too much. I'm going to do it a little bit more. And yeah, I think I'm happy with the greens. Now, there is yellows in the grass as well. So you can really take that autumnal vibe. And that actually looks quite nice there by making the leaves on the ground and all these bits of debris and dirt orange. But I'm going to not go off track, not veer off track. I'm going to leave them as they are. And I'm going to come up to the blues. Now I want to change the blue hue. Wow. The hues in the blues over to the cyan. So we don't really have blue in the hue. We have cyan. Anyway, again, not too much. I don't want it like that neon type of, because look, we have it in Katie's and this jewelry here as well. So I'm going to just bring it down a little bit. Minus 15 looks pretty good. And then I'm going to reduce the saturation because I want Katie as the most colourful thing in the image, bless her. So we reduce the saturation. Again, what is in the sky? I'm not really fussed too much about the sky. So I'm going to pay more attention to what Katie looks like and then what the greens look like. So speaking of Katie, she sits in the oranges and the reds, so we can have some fun with her skin tones. If you like, I would never make her look like the Hulk. That's just something I would never do. So I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to come over to the reds. Now I'm going to make her lipstick stand out by making it more saturated, not too much. And I'm going to make them more prominent by bringing, again, the luminance down. You can see how that affects things. So this matches the vibe that I'm going for. And I think I want the reds, not so much in the pinks, more over towards the oranges. So we can bring it, yeah, plus 12 is absolutely fine. And what I want to do is I want to add some sharpening and some grain. I'm going to come to the details panel, and sharpening is the overall amount of sharpening that is applied to the image. If I zoom in 100% here, now the problem with 48 megapixel, these high resolution 48 megapixel iPhone images, is that they can often look quite soft, especially the ProRAW images, because they don't have sharpening baked in like Hike and JPEG files do. So your high resolution ProRAW images can often look soft because high resolution does not equal sharpening. In fact, higher resolution can sometimes mean less sharp images. That is a full video that I will happily make explaining why, because I will argue with you over this. So I'm going to not add too much sharpening because it looks artificial. Even though we have zoomed in 100%, you'll probably never notice this, but we get some sharpening artifacts here, which I don't like. Even though that's how you look at this image, I don't want those sharpening artifacts there. So I'm going to bring the sharpening down. Now, if you are just living in the sharpening slider by itself, you're missing out because these radius, detail, and masking tools are very powerful, especially for portraits. So the radius affects the smaller, the finer details, but since we don't have many fine details, ooh, that's too close. Since we don't have many fine details to sharpen, we're not going to bring the radius down. I'm going to explain that a bit better. A smaller radius affects the finer details, excuse me. A larger radius affects the larger details. Now, usually you'd have it like this for fine details in the eyes, the eyelashes, the hair and things for a portrait, but we don't have a sharp image to begin with. So we're going to take the radius the other way. Look at how much more natural the sharpening looks straight away when we bring the radius up compared to how it was before. Just looks so much more natural than just cranking the sharpening all the way up. So I'm going to leave the radius there, and detail is more of the same. Finer details can add noise, but we don't have to worry about that in this image because ProRAW files are heavily noise reduced. So we're going to increase the detail as well. Masking is really cool. Masking might be my favorite thing. So if I hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on the key on the keyboard, Alt on the Windows, and you'll see that the screen goes completely white. Now a smaller mask, 0, means everything is sharpened, and that's what the white represents. But as I drag it, you'll see some black starts to appear. And black is the areas that are not being sharpened, they are protected. So that's really cool. So you can see how we can protect the skin tones and just sharpen, we can protect the skin, like the cheeks and things like that we don't want to add sharpening to and make look too harsh and reveal any blemishes and things like that. Katie doesn't have any, but you know, a lot of people do. And we can just sharpen the eyes and the details that we care about. But again, a bit counterintuitive today. We don't really have any fine details, so I'm going to leave it set to 0. And by the way, if you hold down Option, all of these get a fun overlay, and they work if you zoom in. And again, they work on more detail. So you can see here with this high frequency is quite an advanced term. Actually, this is a beginner's tutorial, but if it was an advanced tutorial, and if you want an advanced tutorial, then I can make them for you. For example, if we were to describe the colors in this image in a more advanced way, I would say in color theory terms, I've used a loose asymmetrical triadic scheme to create a tonal contrast and soft visual tension. So if you like pretentious photography jargon, then I'll do some advanced stuff for you. But if you want more fun stuff, let's stick to beginner stuff because it is fun. I kid the advanced. So let's, what am I doing? We're sharpening and grain. So let's add some grain. I don't want my grain to look like noise. So I'm going to bring it up to +19. I'm going to increase the size and increase the roughness to make it look really intentional. This is supposed to be grain. It's not supposed to be noise. Cool. Now, a nice little cherry on top. I'm going to stay in the effects panel, and I want to simulate some like old burn film stock, some dark room type of thing. So I'm going to bring the vignette down 100, midpoint 0, roundness -100, leave the feather where it is, and we now have this very cool vintage effect with the vignette here as a border. Now the one final touch, because apps these days, more and more apps are including ways to separate your subject, to either cut your subject out like in Canva, or blur the background. You can do it in all sorts of apps like Luminar, Photoshop, Lightroom, and I'm sure there's others that I don't know about. So I'm going to add a little bit more blur, not too much. Apply that, bring it down to 20, and reduce the bokeh boost, and fittingly use the 5 blade aperture. And there we go. That's it. Now if I hold the backslash key down, that's the before, and that is the after. And that's just the look that I have chosen for today. I'm not saying this is the best way to edit this image, or this is the only way to edit your ProRAW images. I just want to give you an example of how to approach and how to think about your ProRAW images. There's so many things you can do, but this is the image that I like. This is the one that I'm personally going to go with. So that's it. Hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned something. I'm going to be making similar videos about ProRAW, shooting with ProRAW, editing ProRAW. I think that's going to be coming up next. I'm really looking forward to that one. Hike as well, but if you want more ProRAW stuff, just let me know. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.